Good evening, everyone. I'm the Evernight Writer, and this is the second installment of my A Character Analysis series. The subject of today's analysis is Paarthurnax from the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. If you find that this video provides any value to you, then consider subscribing and maybe even commenting to tell me what you think.
What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?
I don't think it's controversial to say that Skyrim isn't exactly a game overflowing with narrative depth. And yeah, I'm not gonna say the wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle thing again, as I think that phrase fails to paint a fully accurate picture when looking at Skyrim as a whole. Yet from a narrative perspective, it's not necessarily far off. There are a few rays of hope through the Dawnguard DLC as well as maybe the Civil War questline if you look way deeper into it than the developers ever intended. But beyond those, the story exists primarily as a means to justify questing, and even then questing isn't very good. But this isn't a Skyrim critique, this video is a character analysis, but my point is, the game has many memorable characters, but few are memorable on the basis of their narrative complexity. Few, but not none. Paarthurnax translates from the fictional tongue Dovazul to ambition, overlord, cruelty. This is one of the most beloved characters in the entire Elder Scrolls series. And this isn't without reason. Let's delve deeper into the character that is Paarthurnax. To truly understand Paarthurnax and his narrative role within Skyrim, we must first go over a few things. We must understand the dragons, and we must understand the journey of Paarthurnax's brother, Alduin. Let's discuss dragons. But before we do that, I should note, I'm very much aware that most people watching this will likely be familiar with the game and its lore. But that will not be an absolute necessity to watch this video, for the most part. Anyways, dragons. Drake, worm, wyvern, lizard-like serpent monster thing that breathes fire but only like sometimes. The idea of a dragon in its many forms is something that is quite common in both Western and Eastern myth and folklore. Naturally, due to this prevalence, it would end up in our modern stories. I'll be using Hello Future Me's video on world-building dragons as a point of reference as I discuss dragon archetypes. His video on the topic will be linked in the description, which I highly recommend if you're interested in how dragons work from a writing and world-building perspective. Anyways, based on his video, dragons fit into three general archetypes: the Western Beast, the Western Thinker, and the Eastern Sage. The Western Beast, like the name would imply, is a beast. These dragons exist more as a force of nature, a wild animal, if you will. To call these dragons evil would be to call like a tiger evil. It might do something you perceive as evil, but the dragon has no real evil intent. It's just doing what beasts do. In some cases, such a dragon could be tamed. You know, like a pet. The Western Thinker, unlike the Beast, is intelligent, with the capacity to think and reason, though will still generally be antagonistic. These dragons can be reasoned with, they can deceive or be deceived. The Eastern Sage, like the Western Thinker, is intelligent, but also has the characteristic of being not just intelligent, but ancient and wise, if not divine in some aspects. Generally, these dragons are either neutral or can act as a guide, granting wisdom or power. These archetypes are not an absolute. It's possible for some dragons to pull aspects from more than one. Enter the Elder Scrolls. Dragons in the Elder Scrolls tend to pull aspects from all of these archetypes, though mostly from the Western Thinker and Eastern Sage, at least in lore. So let's discuss lore. Elder Scrolls lore is extensive and can get quite complicated at times, due to conflicting accounts of a singular event. So I'll keep this discussion on the surface level, for the most part. One of the 9 or 8 major deities within the world of the Elder Scrolls is a god named Akatosh. In a sense, this is the primary patron god of humans, though that is simplifying it a bit. The god is often represented through the form of a dragon, thus it's fitting that the firstborn of the dragon god Akatosh is the dragon Alduin, the World Eater. Alduin's title is no joke. This is his purpose, a dragon meant to end the world when the time was right. The thing is, Alduin had other ideas. Thousands of years before present, Alduin decided instead of being the guy to end the world, he'd rather rule it. So started the dragon cult of Atmora. Atmora is a frozen land north of Tamriel, and the humans there, the Old Nords, worship different animal totems that represented different gods. One of these totems was the dragon. Presumably, this dragon represented Akatosh. And it's from this worship of dragons came the dragon cult, where Alduin ruled over humans as a god king. Dragons aren't exactly overly social creatures, thus they rule through appointed dragon priests. During this time on Atmora, relations between the Nords and their dragon overlords was presumably peaceful. It's only after their arrival on the main continent Tamriel in the land of Skyrim that the dragons became cruel. Naturally, the local Nords weren't fond of this newfound cruelty and turned against the dragon cult. Thus began the Dragon War. The leader of the dragons was Alduin, but Alduin's right-hand man, his top lieutenant and brother, was none other than Paarthurnax. And it's said in this conflict between dragon and human, Paarthurnax committed many atrocities. And while the exact nature of his actions aren't known, considering his name means ambition, overlord, cruelty, then we can imagine that it probably was pretty bad. At some point, Paarthurnax betrayed his fellow dragons, joining the side of the Nords. To aid them, Paarthurnax taught them how to use the Thu'um, which was a gift from the god Kine. This Thu'um, also known as a storm voice or a dragon shout, is a form of magic where so-called words of power are literally shouted to manifest different forms of power. A good example is unrelenting force. The words of power are Fus, Ro, and Da, meaning force, balance, and push. When shouted, it manifests a devastating shockwave blowing away smaller targets. Through Paarthurnax's aid, armed with the power of the Thu'um, the Nords stood a fighting chance against Alduin and his dragon cult. This conflict would come to an end when ancient Nordic warriors created a dragon shout themselves. This was known as Dragonrend, a shout even the dragons couldn't use. Atop the tallest peak of Tamriel, a place called the Throat of the World, a group of Nords brandished the great shout Dragonrend as well as an Elder Scroll as they clashed with Alduin the World Eater. And in the end, they were triumphant. With Alduin no more, the dragons across Skyrim were defeated, reduced to mere bones, and in time, the Dragon War came to an end. After this war, Paarthurnax retired to the Throat of the World, where he would eventually come to practice the Way of the Voice. But before I get into that, let's actually discuss the Elder Scrolls V and how we, the Dragonborn, fit into this. When I said the Nords were triumphant in their clash against Alduin, that wasn't necessarily the full truth, which should be obvious considering he's the main antagonist of the Elder Scrolls V. The Nords weren't entirely successful. Alduin wasn't slain. It's questionable whether or not it's even possible to kill such a being. What they did was effectively send him forward in time, so when Paarthurnax took refuge at the Throat of the World, he was actually waiting for Alduin to once again return. And so he would, thousands of years later, in the 201st year of the Fourth Era, a time far removed from the dragon cult of old. Alduin's mighty wings once again tore through the skies of Skyrim. Now, from Alduin's perspective, mere moments ago he was battling a group of Nords on the Throat of the World. Then, out of nowhere, he popped into a version of Skyrim that looked different. Most notably, his kin was absent from the skies. The might of the Dova had long been forgotten. Alduin was alone, except he wasn't. Likely one of the first things Alduin would have seen was Paarthurnax. He was waiting at the Throat of the World, after all, to face Alduin. And with his return, there was likely a clash, but it's unlikely that he was any match for the World Eater, considering Paarthurnax is, let's just say he's aged, compounded by the fact that right after, Alduin would burn the town of Helgen to the ground. Now, it just so happens around that time, a random Nord was on the chopping block for illegally crossing the border with the Heartland. Seconds away from getting his head chopped off, Alduin's assault was a saving grace. But this was no random Nord. This was one who bore the title Dovahkiin, or Dragonborn. We, the Dragonborn, are effectively an individual chosen by Akatosh to bear the responsibility of ending Alduin's tyranny. Only one who bears the title Dragonborn could ever slay a dragon permanently. See, the dragons within the Elder Scrolls are effectively immortal, so when the humans slew them, they never truly died. They just lay dormant, waiting to be awakened by Alduin. But if a dragon were to be killed by the Dragonborn, their soul, their very existence would be absorbed, and it would be their end. This means the only real threat to Alduin was us, the guy he just saved. As I stated before, to truly understand Paarthurnax, we must understand the journey of Alduin, but I think it's worthwhile to also go over the journey of the Dragonborn. The Dragonborn is a faceless, voiceless character. They have no opinions, motives, or even worldviews. Like all other Elder Scrolls protagonists, the main character is merely an instrument for which the player interacts with the world. It's up to you to project will upon your character, so there's little narrative insight to be gained, really. But there is value in the journey of the Dragonborn as a means of adding greater context to the world, considering this video is supposed to be new player friendly. Now, actually, the journey of the Dragonborn is basically the main plot of the game, so, I mean, spoilers? But more realistically, you probably already know the story, so I'll leave some timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to when I really start discussing Paarthurnax. After escaping Helgen, we end up in the service of Jarl Balgruuf, the leader of Skyrim's central hold Whiterun. His court wizard tasked us with finding an item called the Dragonstone, which is a map of dragon burial sites. After completing this task, the Jarl enlists our help with facing a dragon that had attacked Whiterun's western watchtower. And here the Dragonborn will have their first face-off against a dragon called Mirmulnir. Funny, this is probably the best dragon fight in the entire game. I mean, really, it's only downhill from here. Here we slay our first dragon and learn of our Dragonborn status. Soon after, we'll hear a thunderous call from the heavens. This was the summons of the Greybeards. We ascend the 7,000 steps of High Hrothgar, which is more like 700, but we ascend nonetheless. The Greybeards are a faction of monks who follow the philosophy of the Way of the Voice, pioneered by a man named Jörgen Windcaller. After meeting with the Greybeards, we are confirmed to be the Dragonborn, and after some training, we are sent off on a journey to find the horn of Jörgen Windcaller, as a trial to validify our Dragonborn status. After cutting our way through the dungeon, it turns out the item is missing, replaced with a note directing us to Riverwood. Here we meet a former Blades agent, Delphine. She is important. The Blades go way back to the ancient warriors of a continent named Akavir. In the modern day, they were the personal protectors of the Emperor of the Septim Empire, though also acted as a special operations force, working in matters of espionage. That being said, due to political reasons, they were formally disbanded. The old Septim Empire was ruled by Dragonborn emperors, thus the Blade's loyalty was to the Dragonborn. This will be important later on. For now, when we meet her, she doesn't believe we're the Dragonborn.
The Greybeards seem to think you're the Dragonborn. I hope they're right. I hope so, but you'll forgive me if I don't assume that something's true just because the Greybeards say so. I just handed you the horn of Jörgen Windcaller. Does that make me Dragonborn too?
Delphine is presented as a very tough character. Living in hiding does that to a person, I guess. Unfortunately, all this really means is that she comes off as a little pretentious. Unnecessarily so.
I'll explain what I want when I want. Got it? You'd already be dead if I didn't like the look of you when you walked in here.
You serious?
I'm part of a group that's been looking for you. Well, something like you for a very long time. If you really are Dragonborn. Good. I can use the practice.
To prove we're the Dragonborn, Delphine leads us to a place named Kynesgrove, where we again meet Alduin. This time we see him actually resurrecting a dragon. Alduin now recognizes us as Dragonborn, and we have to face the dragon Soluknir. And with its defeat, Delphine officially recognizes us as Dragonborn. After a few more shenanigans, we help her find her buddy Esbern and end up at a place called Skyhaven Temple. It's here we find Alduin's wall and a potential way to defeat him. The Shout Dragonrend. After returning to High Hrothgar, we will be formally recognized as Dragonborn, and we can ascend even higher beyond High Hrothgar to the throat of the world. It is here we can meet Paarthurnax, who will then direct us to finding an Elder Scroll. From it, we can learn the shot we needed to defeat Alduin. He then, moments later, show up at the throat of the world, where we face off with him with the aid of Paarthurnax. After his defeat, he retreats to Sovngarde, awaiting our final battle. Now, to get to Sovngarde, we need to go to a place called Skuldolphin. And to get there, we need to trap a dragon. But then to do that, we need to negotiate a ceasefire between two warring factions in Skyrim. After that, we trap the dragon, head to Skuldolphin, then to Sovngarde where we meet some cool guys, then finally defeat Alduin. Yep, good old Skyrim main quest. But after that whole negotiating a ceasefire debacle, we were presented with a choice. Well, more like an ultimatum from Delphine. But before we dissect that, let's finally discuss Paarthurnax. If you were like me, you also weren't expecting Paarthurnax to be a dragon. See, in lore, the Dove of the Elder Scrolls are meant to be more akin to the Western thinker archetype. These dragons are incredibly prideful. It's in a dragon's very nature to dominate, as it is within the nature of a cat to hunt even when domesticated, or the very nature of a tree to grow to absorb energy from the sun. But make no mistake, these dragons were and are not animals. They possess human level, if not extra human level intellect. Unfortunately, this is one of the many narrative failings for Skyrim. It doesn't present most dragons the way they're presented in lore. Wild animalistic creatures that will literally fly off into the mountainside to attack random animals. So finding a dragon that didn't immediately attack us came as a surprise, at least to me. Visually, Paarthurnax is quite distinct from other dragons. I'm personally a big fan of synergy of narrative and character design. And just by looking at Paarthurnax, even without knowing his story, you can immediately tell he's ancient. His wings torn, horns broken, combined with a genuinely withered look paints a picture of a being that's seen many come and pass. Paarthurnax is presented as somewhat of a mentor. Age connotates experience, which then connotates wisdom. And this is one of the reasons why Paarthurnax is so beloved in my opinion. He's really the only mentor character that doesn't try and openly manipulate you. He offers guidance untainted by personal ambition, and even more importantly, untainted by pride. Now, that doesn't sound very dragon-like. It's neither the Western thinker, as dragons are on paper, nor is he the Western beast like most of the dragons in the game. Paarthurnax fits somewhat comfortably into the Eastern Sage archetype. Not perfectly, mind you, but closer than any other Dova. He's not like other dragons, as he overcame his will to dominate. He overcame his pride. But what could compel what was once one of the most dominant and powerful dragons to deny his own nature and commit himself to a life of solitude and meditation? Well, it just so happens there's another figure that had a similar journey to Paarthurnax, someone he likely once knew and guided. Jörgen Windcaller. As I mentioned before, he was the guy that pioneered the Way of the Voice and the founder of the Greybeard Order of High Hrothgar. Jörgen Windcaller, like Paarthurnax, was once a great warrior and master of the Thu'um, but after a crushing defeat followed by years of meditation and contemplation, he concluded that the Thu'um was not gifted to man as a tool for war and conquest. It was not to be used as a means of glorifying oneself, but as a means of enlightenment and to foster a deeper connection with the divine. It's upon this basis that the pacifist philosophy of the Way of the Voice was formed. Yet, even still, the Thu'um is seen primarily as a weapon, brandished by many men throughout history, from Talos Stormcrown in the Elder Days to Ulfric's Stormcloak more recently, and even us, the Dragonborn. In a weird way, Jörgen was the Paarthurnax of humans, as dragons followed a similar journey. They too primarily used the voice as a means of war and conquest. It was in their very nature to dominate, after all. Paarthurnax was the true pioneer of the Way of the Voice. He was the first Dova to recognize it as a means of enlightenment and greater understanding. It's likely that he helped Jörgen Windcaller develop his philosophy, considering High Hrothgar was built near the throat of the world, where Paarthurnax was awaiting Alduin. So him going against his own nature, quelling his own will to dominate, was likely a response to a similar revelation to the one Jörgen Windcaller had after his great defeat. Now, this is one train of thought. There are other ways of looking at this, less favorable, if you will. Paarthurnax's betrayal of Alduin might not have been purely altruistic. What he recognized might not have been a revelation about the Way of the Voice, but a means of rewriting the status quo, a means of attaining power for himself. Think about it, he was second in command. If Alduin were to be defeated, then he's likely who a significant amount of the dragon cult would look to. And after we defeat Alduin, that's exactly what we see. Paarthurnax now aims to force his philosophy on all dragons. making him the leader of this new age. Naturally, of course, this would be beneficial to us humans, dragons quelling their will to dominate and all, but in the case of Paarthurnax, he is the one dominating. Through great ambition, he's now the overlord. This is just one way of looking at it, a less common way to be clear, but it's not entirely without grounds. Anyways, here enters the big question. Delphine's ultimatum.
One more thing. We know about Paarthurnax. That's fine. We needed his help. Now we don't. And it's long past time for him to pay for his crimes. And he's not just any dragon. He was the right hand of Alduin. He committed atrocities so infamous they are still remembered thousands of years later. He needs to die. He deserves to die. And it falls to you to kill him. Until he's dead. Well, I'm sorry, but we would dishonor our oaths as blades if we continued to help you.
After the peace treaty in the Great Halls of High Hrothgar, Delphine tells us she knows about Paarthurnax and wants us to kill him. Her logic is that back in the day, he committed unspeakable atrocities against man, and for that, he should be punished with death by our hands. The fact that he betrayed Alduin doesn't make him better. It makes him worse? Okay, I'm just gonna say this here. I am biased. I didn't and don't really want to kill Paarthurnax. That being said, I really like that Bethesda attempted to attach at least one decision into the main quest that has some moral complexity. Unfortunately, the execution is not great. See, Delphine says she would dishonor her oath as a blade if she continued to help us whilst Paarthurnax was still alive. And yeah, whilst we all kinda know the blades as those who serve the Dragonborn and the Dragonborn Emperors, they are also dragon hunters. Except that makes zero fucking sense. Yeah, this is where I go off. I know this is supposed to be a character analysis, but I really need to get this off my chest. I'll be brief. See, the last time the Blades were actually dragon hunters was back in Akavir, with the Akaviri Dragon Guard. They invaded Tamriel, but upon discovering a Dragonborn, Raymond Cyrodiil, they swore fealty to him, and their purpose was to serve and protect the one that holds the status as Dragonborn. The thing is, since then, there haven't really been a whole lot of dragons roaming about the skies of Tamriel. Naturally, the Dragon Guard developed into what the Blades are supposed to be today, a special ops and intelligence force, not dragon slayers. So the idea that she would be betraying her oath as a Blades agent is built upon a millennia-old tradition that itself wasn't even followed. Even Tiber Septim himself, the founder of the modern Humanic Empire, hired a dragon in his western conquest of Hammerfell. Now, how come the Blades didn't give him an ultimatum? Yeah, I could go on and on about how nonsensical the execution of this whole thing is, but that isn't very productive, nor does it really add any value to this analysis. So while the execution, justification, and presentation of this choice is suboptimal, the choice itself is actually pretty interesting, and isn't as one-sided as the community might make it seem. So let's put Paarthurnax on trial. Well, in a morality court, which itself is subjective, depending on who you ask. For crimes committed against humanity in the Dragon War. The opposition states that Paarthurnax committed atrocities so infamous that they are still remembered today, which is interesting since we have no idea what these are, nor do we hear anyone but the Blades and the Greybeards speak on this, so yeah. That's the opposition, Paarthurnax war crimes. There are three defenses presented by Ognir. The first defense is that he was just following orders. I don't think I need to explain why this doesn't hold up. Don't really want to talk about that one group of gentlemen and their actions back in the late 1930s, early 1940s, but yeah, the defense that you were just following orders doesn't really hold up morally, not when said atrocities were being committed by your own hands. Second defense, he atoned by helping humans. The human victory in the Dragon War was in significant part due to aid given from Paarthurnax. At least, that's how we understand it. Now, if we make the assumption that there was no other path to victory beyond Paarthurnax's aid, then it becomes a question of, did his aid in ending the Dragon War outweigh the atrocities he committed? And this is tough, due to the fact that we don't really know the nature of these atrocities. Even then, even if it did, is that justice? Well, let's say, hypothetically, I was a high-ranking official working under a certain dictator. And under him, I committed many unspeakable crimes against humanity that were so vile that they would be remembered a millennia later. But I also aided a resistance in bringing the downfall of said dictator. Would you say that my aid was enough to pardon my crimes? Would it be justice for me to be allowed to live, even though I presumably committed unspeakable atrocities? There's no real right answer here, but from a real-world context, I doubt most people would believe that this was justice. The third and final defense: no one is guiltless, and to kill Paarthurnax would be to deny his ability to repent. This is not nearly as simple as it initially appears on face value, but for the sake of brevity, I won't delve too deeply into the moral and legal implications of this defense. But the idea is, to execute Paarthurnax would be to claim that no one, no matter how earnestly they have changed, can never atone. It would suggest that history is a prison with no key, and that repentance is ultimately meaningless. Paarthurnax not only guides humans in the way of the voice, but more likely than not guided the development of this philosophy in the first place. A philosophy that to its core is built upon the principles of peace, wisdom, and enlightenment. It's not his fault that most Nords don't adhere to this philosophy. But let's hear from the man himself. What does Paarthi have to say about this?
The Blades are wise not to trust me. Onikan Niov. I would not trust another Dova. Dov Walan Farel. We were made to dominate. The will to power is in our blood. You feel it in yourself, do you not? I can be trusted. I know this, but they do not. Onikan Niov Dova. It is always wise to mistrust a Dova. I have overcome my nature only through meditation and long study of the way of the voice. No day goes by where I am not tempted to return to my inborn nature. Zingriforvut se sulyech. What is better, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, if I was Paarthurnax's lawyer, I'd be dying right now. But luckily, this is Morality Justice Court, not legal, so this isn't all that bad. I think it speaks really heavily to why players hold Paarthurnax in such high regard. Unlike both the Greybeards and the Blades, Paarthurnax doesn't really try to persuade you into making a decision. Well, at least not as overtly as the other two. He acknowledges why the Blades aren't entirely unjustified in their request. Hell, I think Paarthurnax made a better case than the Blades did for why he should be cut down. He acknowledges the fact that one should never trust a Dova due to their innate will to dominate. At the same time, he presents a pretty strong moral defense. Paarthurnax is old, and all this time he's quelled his very own nature. He trusts his own capacity for restraint, but still recognizes why some might doubt it. So the decision is left up to us. Now, I know what I would choose, but I also acknowledge that this wasn't nearly as one-sided as I thought it would be going into this analysis. The choice of whether or not to kill Paarthurnax, whilst not presented well, is one that has depth. It's definitely not as deep as a puddle here. Paarthurnax, second-born to Akatosh and betrayer of the World Eater Alduin. A dragon who through great ambition overcame an innate will to dominate. A dragon who devoted himself to a pacifist ideology and now guide others in its teachings. Yet when the time came, he was once again willing to take to the skies and challenge the World Eater aside the Dragonborn. A dragon who, if allowed to live, seeks to dawn in a new age for his own kind, not built upon domination, but enlightenment. Paarthurnax, the Great Eastern Sage. Paarthurnax, second-born to the god Akatosh, and the second-in-command to the World Eater Alduin. A Dova who through great ambition survived the Dragon War. A Dova who through great ambition survived the culling of his own kind. One who recognized the impending downfall of the Dragon Cult and joined the side destined to win. One who laid in wait for millennia to once again challenge his enemy. A Nova that, if allowed to live, will take the place of dominance over dragonkind. Paarthurnax, the great Western thinker. No matter how you interpret it, Paarthurnax overcame his cruelty, overcame his pride, but he was nothing if not ambitious. Even then, upon Alduin's defeat, whilst he recognized and understood its necessity, he was still saddened. Of course, Alduin was the world leader and a tyrant, but he was also Paarthurnax's brother.
Happy? No, I am not happy. Zeh mahi lost, ondul bormahu. Alduin was once the crown of our father Akatosh's creation. You did what was necessary. Alduin had flown far from the path of right action in his Pachlok, in the arrogance of his power. But I cannot celebrate his fall. Zutiraz ach ochma. He was my brother once. This world will never be the same.
If I were to compare Paarthurnax to any other character, it would be General Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender, a once great warrior who would give up their stature to devote themselves to a life of humility. It's really sad that throughout the Dragonborn's entire journey, we're given few opportunities to make choices. They spend time presenting the philosophy of the Greybeards, yet we are rarely given a chance to practice its principles. I talked about the main quest of Skyrim, our journey across forest and tundra, and throughout, for the most part, there are very few choices actually given to you, the Dragonborn. This isn't just a shortcoming of Skyrim, but one present in most Bethesda games. Paarthurnax is one of the better characters we've gotten from Bethesda Game Studios. He's a character that doesn't need to be overanalyzed to find depth. His presentation, from visual design to vocal performance, all comes together to paint a picture of one of the most iconic dragons in video games. Thanks for watching. This video took quite a while to research and put together, so if you found any value in it and would like to see more character analysis and hopefully more, consider subscribing. Some of you might have noticed that this video is a lot shorter than the previous one, which wasn't intentional. How long these character analysis videos are isn't something I predetermine, nor do I really try to hit a certain word count in my scripts. I just write as much as I think I need to properly analyze the character in question. Speaking of that, I have an entire list of characters I like to cover in the future, in no particular order, of course. If you have any characters you'd like me to talk about, then go ahead and drop them down in the comments, and I might add them to my list. Anyways, thanks for stopping by for my show, and have a beautiful night.